Hey everyone, Mr. Piano Tech here, and today I'm going to show you how to fix a broken string. Okay, so broken strings. So first, it's important to determine why the string broke in the first place. Now, strings will break for various reasons. I find in my experience, it's most likely caused by rust on the string. So a lot of times with a rusty string, it can pop on its own if it gets too bad. But usually I find that if it's rusty, it'll break when you go to tune it, especially if you're doing a pitch raise. Sometimes the string will break due to it binding on a part of the plate. Some pianos just happen to be string poppers, and it's kind of hard to determine sometimes why they're breaking on a particular piano. And also sometimes it could be your fault. Occasionally you will put your tuning lever on the wrong tuning pin and push it up and pop the string. So that happens every now and then as well. So I typically will replace a string over repairing it because most of the strings that I run into that broke due to rust, and I don't want to tie a new fresh leader onto a rusty string because it's just going to break again. So I do recommend carrying replacement strings with you. I carry replacement treble strings in each size, including the half sizes, and I do also carry a set of the tenor replacement strings from Shaft. Now when it comes to the double wound bass string where there's just one string per note, I don't typically carry replacements for those because in my experience they don't often break. Typically with those I'll tie a tuner's knot or I will special order a replacement. So in a moment we're going to go ahead and head out to the shop, and I'm going to show you how to repair a string by using a tuner's knot, as well as how to replace one properly. Alright, so let's head out into the shop and get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with the tenor bass section, and we're going to start by repairing a string by tying a tuner's knot. Usually what I run into is the string will break somewhere in this area. If it does break on the speaking side of the string, I don't recommend tying a knot. As you could get some pretty nasty buzzing out of it if you do that. Just replace the string if possible. But usually I find that they break here. Very, very rarely do I find that they break at the other end near the hitch pin. This is typically, for me at least, where they break. So it's important when you're tying a knot to look at where the best place to stick it would be. Sometimes you don't have much of a choice because of where the string broke. But I'm going to go ahead and break this left string here, and we'll tie a knot and I'll show you what to do. I don't typically like to put it on the felt here, as dragging it across can damage the felt. I usually try to stick it in an open spot. This piano doesn't have much open spot. Some pianos have a ton of it, and then it makes your job that much easier. This one doesn't, so we got to be real tight here in tying the knot. So I'm going to go ahead and break the string, and then I'll show you how to tie the knot. Okay, so let's say this is the condition that we found the piano in, or that this string broke while we were tuning it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get rid of the string that's still sitting on the pin there. Sometimes it'll come loose. I pulled it out a little bit, but basically what you'll do is just get to where you can get between the string and the pin, and then pry it out and take it out. Now, sometimes you may need to back the pin out a little bit for it to allow you to do that. And you're going to have to anyway before you put the new leader on. So don't go all the way out with the pin, just do one turn. So just do one half and then one turn there. That's as far back as you want to go out with the pin. If you go out too far and then you have to go back in, it's liable to make this pretty loose in here, in which will cause issues with tuning stability. So this is what we're left with. Now we're going to want to tie the knot somewhere around here. So we need to pick a leader size. I typically use a size 18 of treble string. That's pretty good in my experience. You can go a little thinner with leaders, just don't go too thick. If you go too thick, you run the risk of the string breaking, or the leader breaking when you put the tension back on it, because it can't handle being brought up that high. Thinner sizes are okay. 18, I find a good size because it's strong enough, and but it's also, it's not too rigid, allows me to kind of play around with it a little bit. But your experiences may vary. Again, it's okay to go a little thinner, just don't go too thick. So I'm going to use a size 18 string for the leader. Now, I'll make note, when you start doing this, put gloves on, wear eye protection. I've had strings do some pretty nasty things to me. They can be dangerous. Be very careful when you're cutting strings. And also, another benefit of wearing gloves, especially if you have real acidic hands, which I don't, but if you do, you can, rust spots of the strings or discolor them, and everywhere you touch the copper winding, you're going to discolor it. So just wear gloves, try to keep your fingers off of it as much as possible. But I'm going to go ahead and we back this pin out one full turn, taking the old string off, and I'll go ahead and cut a leader, and then I'll show you how to tie the knot. Okay, so I have my little piece of leader here. It's not too long. You don't want to make it too long. You don't want to make it too short, to give yourself some to play with, but don't make it so long. And I'll show you why in a second, why it's going to be tricky if you make this too long. Okay, so we know we're going to want this loop somewhere right around here. So we can get rid of some of this excess string. Grab my better clippers for that. You can take off probably about that much. And in a minute, I'll show you also how I pin down the rear end of the string here so that it doesn't actually go anywhere, because that's important too. You don't want it to keep trying to slip off the back while you're doing work in the front. It's really frustrating. But anyway, okay, so let's go ahead, and what I do first is you find about where you want that knot. I'm going to want it right around there. Okay, so, and if you're right-handed, do this, you can do it the opposite way, you can do it the same way, it doesn't really matter. So you want to turn or twist this to the left side. It's the way that I do it. Like I said, if you're right-handed, it may be easier to put it on the right side, just do everything opposite. But so I will twist this onto the left side of the string. So again, I spun it backwards, and I left this on the left side of the string there. Okay, so we have our first one. Swung them to the left. Our leader, we're going to go underneath the string. You can see this, go underneath the string, and then go this way with it over the string like that. So you're going to go to the left again, like that, onto that side. So you want to loop it around that. So again, this one, go to the left, this one, come this way to the left, around that string. And then all you're going to do is turn this upside down, like this. Take your other end of the leader and go through from the outside, just like that. So that it looks like that. Okay, so when you're getting them close to each other, if you can see that okay, it should look like a little figure eight. See if I can get you a better angle on that. If you can see that okay. So as you're pulling them close, where this curves around will be facing that way. This one will curve around facing that way. You want these two little guys up against each other. So what I do at this point is I'll go ahead and take the leader and apply a fair little amount of pressure there so that it looks just like that. You can see that. Okay, so now we'll do, I'll put the tension back on the back of the string, and then we'll cut this to proper length and put it on. I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so I've put the back of the string back on the hitch pin, and we have our knot. It's hanging right where we want it. So now, how much do we cut off here? So what I use as a guide is you use 3 fingers. So if you're at the tuning pin, figure 3 fingers of length right there, and then that's where you're going to cut right here. When you have a knot, you can cut a little closer because you're going to have to take up some of that excess line anyway. Typically on a winding, you want at least 3 solid winds around the pin. 3 to 4 is fine. I usually end up with right around 3. And that's what 3 fingers will typically give you, is right around 3. So we're going to go here and go a little bit closer. Okay, so now we know we backed that out one time. So what I'll typically do is just get the holes in it lined up to where it's facing the front of the piano and facing back to the strings. And then what we want to do is we want to pre-wind that. So that's a tool that I use here. I just use a spare tuning pin that I have. This is a really good tool. You can adjust the height depending on where the hole is, depending on how long this tuning pin is. But it's a really great tool in getting things started. I use these when I use this when I restring a piano. So what you want to do is go in there like that. And I always just go down to the end here, hold it tight, and then give it a few turns. Okay, so we're left with that. Okay, so if we were restringing a piano, we would take that and we'd punch it into the pin block, but we're not. So we're gonna need to take that pin back off from the string. So we just use this. Just like that, okay? Set your other pin aside. Okay, so just back this out a little bit until you can get over that pin, just like that. Work that down. Now just find your spot. Right here, it's in the front. You might have to kind of play around with this a little bit to determine the right place to stick this so that it has a good amount of tension on it when you do start putting it on. And go ahead and spin it a little bit so I can bring that around with a little tension on it. Put that in there just like that. Okay, so the other tool we're going to use now is a string lifter. The thing about these is that they will allow you to get underneath the coil and to tighten up the winding, and on the other end you have a good spacer for especially treble strings of spacing the strings out properly apart. So anyway, I usually just kind of help it get in there a little bit more like that. And then let's just pull some tension up on it. Okay. And again, let's make sure that looks good. And we'll just keep that winding a little tight on there while we pull this up some more. Okay. Now you'll see this knot, of course, get tighter and tighter. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so that's basically what you should be getting. You can, like I said, play around with where you want to place it. What you don't want to do is you don't want to stick it right on that bearing point there, so you're having to drag it across. If you do, it's not the end of the world. The biggest thing is to make sure it's not on the speaking side of the string. But you know, your little ends sticking out, you can trim them down some. Don't trim them too much because it may still pull them some out. But you don't want those really any longer than about 6 millimeters. It's kind of the cutoff point for the lengths of those. So anyway, just tighten up your coil, tighten up your knot, bring it up to pitch, and that's it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you on the workbench a closer up shot of me tying this, just in case you couldn't see everything I was doing. I'll show you exactly how to do it. But again, the most critical thing is just knot placement. You may not have much choice depending on where the string broke, but just try to give it some free space somewhere, wherever you can. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little closer up view here of doing the tuner's knot. So let's pretend this is the string in the piano. So, and like I said, if you're right-handed, you can still do it the same way, or you could just reverse everything, mirror everything if you want to. But anyway, this is the basics of it. You'll take the one that's in the piano and figure out where you want the loop to be. And then you'll twist it like this and keep that to the left, just like that. Snug it a little bit so that when you let go, it stays down like that. Then you're going to take your leader. I'll take some of it off here. All right. So take your leader, and you're going to go under the string like this, and you're going to go just like this around the string and stay to the left again, just like that. Snug it so that it's like this, okay? And then all you're going to do is you're going to come upside down like that, take this, and go through this loop from the left side, like this. Okay, so once you pull that through, you should end up with something that looks like that. Just like that. You can see that okay. And then what you'll do is you'll either crank it up in the piano, you can add a little tension. I like to do this just like that, just to cinch it up a little bit. So these guys should be up against each other. The one that's coming around and going up and the one that's coming around and going down, those should be right up against each other when you tie this. And then once everything's cinched up, then you can clip your ends. Like I said, you want to be no more than like maybe 6 millimeters or so length sticking out. If you're doing in the piano, you may need to make it kind of short to begin with, so you're not scratching up things. Just be careful of that. But so anyway, yeah, that's what it'll basically look like. And once you put the final tension on it with the tuning pin, it'll cinch it up really, really tight, and then just clip your ends and make it look nice. Now, if you determine you'd rather replace the string, if you have the replacement strings, really simple. Again, you're just going to loosen this pin 1 full turn, pop the string out of it, and then, well, it'll probably be broken somewhere anyway, but if this is still intact up here, pop the string out, cut it, get it out of there. If you're using the shaft replacement strings, you're going to have a lot of excess winding on each end because they want you to determine where you need to make that cut. So what I'll do is I typically will install the string, bring it up here, and then wherever the winding is of the string next to it, I go back about 1/4 of an inch, and that's where I'll cut off my winding. In doing so, usually when you pull it up to pitch, it'll be right around where it should be, because I've noticed that strings will usually stretch about 1/4 of an inch when you pull it up to pitch the first time. We're going to go ahead and take this string off. So what we'll do, again, we'll just go back out 1 full turn. That will loosen that up enough for us to be able to get it out of there. So use your pliers, small screwdriver, whichever you prefer. Okay, now that we got that off, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Okay, I'll go ahead and take the string out. Okay, so now we have the string out. I've brought up my set of the shaft strings. Keep various sizes in here. So you could, I guess, use a micrometer and measure the string itself. I don't find that's typically necessary. I'll usually just line it up with the strings in here and find a good match. Again, it's better to go a little thinner than to go a little thicker. A little thinner, it can reach the pitch that you need it at no problem. If it's a little too thick, you could possibly bust the string, bringing it up past where it should be. That looks like a pretty close match, so we're going to go ahead and go with that one. Okay, now that we've determined the proper size, what I do is I go ahead and put the string on at the back, go ahead and put it on the hitch pin, put it over the bridge like you normally would. Don't worry about cutting the winding down there quite yet. And I recommend you do it this way. If you use the old string for reference, you got to remember that string's already been stretched a bunch. So if you make the winding the same length, it's going to end up longer. So again, go up here. I find that around 1/4 inch or so is usually good. But I go ahead and cut my overall length first, give myself plenty to play with. Okay, then these spin counterclockwise, I believe, and they do. Okay, so mark about where you're going to want that. That's usually about the right amount of stretch, right around there. I just do just a little squeeze, and then just a little bit in the direction of the winding, just like that. And this is easy enough just to pull off the front. I just go ahead and grab it like this, and then just pull on it. Okay, once we reach the end of it, where you cut it, the rest of it will slide off. Okay, so we have our winding. Now what I always do, make sure there's no little bits and pieces that are going to come off. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'll just tighten this up a little bit. I always just go in the direction of the winding and just make sure we're good and snug there. It looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing at the other end. Okay, so I'm going to show you the back end of this. I highly recommend using pliers like these to hold the string onto the back of the hitch pin. These are great, and especially if you keep them tightened up, because they'll just hold in whatever position you want them in. So what I typically do, like I said, just put this replacement string on just like normal. just so we can get an idea of where we're going to need the winding to be. But in the back here, just use a little piece of felt, something to protect the hitch pin, especially if it's painted and not plated. But what I'll do is just do this. Just hold that over there like that, and then just give it a little squeeze. It'll hold itself there. It'll keep the string on the back end of that, which is great when you're working by yourself and you don't have anybody to help. That'll keep it from popping off the hitch pin. So again, anyway, we'll just look at this and we'll kind of just figure about where we need that winding to be cut. You can cut it fairly close. I'd cut this one about as close as the one next to it there. I guess it'll stretch some, but you want as much winding on there as possible. So I'll go ahead and make a little mark here. So we're going to want it around there. Again, this winding goes on counterclockwise if you're looking at the back of the string. So I always just kind of cut it like that, squeeze it just a little bit, just in the direction of the winding. And then I'll take this off and pull the rest of that winding off, and then we'll reinstall it. Okay, so we have the winding now trimmed to where we need it to be. So we'll go ahead and reinstall it here. And what's really important too is after we attach it to the front, we're going to leave a little slack and come back here again, and we're going to twist this string in the direction of the winding. If you don't, one of two things typically happens. It'll either buzz or it'll just sound really dull and have no real tone at all to it. So again, we'll use these pliers, use our piece of felt here to protect the hitch pin. Just like this. We'll snug it down, and that shouldn't move. We're back on the bridge, and we're good to go ahead and get it tightened up. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pulled the string through the A-graph. Just be mindful when the dampers are in the piano that you don't bend those while you're doing this. You may just want to block them up, or and just make sure you're actually on the right side of the damper wire and you're not ending up on the outside on the wrong side of it. So just be cautious of that. So we already have our pin backed up one full turn. I went ahead and did like we did before and just spun it onto the other tuning pin, then took it off, and I'm going to reinstall it onto this one. Just like that. Okay, your string lifter tool again, just to make sure that's snug in there. Okay, as we start pulling it up, just keep making sure that that stays snug in the tuning pin. Use your lifter to lift it up. We snug things down. And this would be a good time to, if you need to make any adjustments, especially in the treble, to the spacing of the strings. This is a good time to do it. Okay, so before we go any further, take a little bit of tension back off. We're going to pull the string off at the back, and we're going to twist that string into the proper direction. Okay, so we're back here at the back. Let's go ahead and take the rear end of this string off. Okay, so again, the winding on this one goes counterclockwise. So I usually just go at least maybe between 1 and 2 turns. Typically does a good job. See, let's go about 1.5 on this one. If you're working on a piano where the string is such a way where it hasn't unwound itself, then you can count how many times it undoes itself when you take it off. But usually a couple twists is pretty good, and it'll give it pretty good tone. Okay, so now that's back on, and we will put our pliers back on here in the back end of this so that that does not slide off the hitch pin. Snug down. All right, we're good to go. I'll go ahead and pull up the tension again. Okay, now that we've gone to the back and twisted that in the proper direction, let's make sure this is snug again. Pull the tension back up. Okay, and you should find when you're up to tension, you should be pretty evened up there in regards to where you cut the winding. And there's a little repair sitting next to it too. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to replace a string in the treble section. Okay, so with treble strings, just be aware when you have a 3-string unison, when one breaks, just you got to remember that it'll go down from one tuning pin down around the hitch pin back up. So technically it's one string, but it's considered two strings with a 3-string unison. So just make sure you watch and see if, does it go around the hitch pin and come back? Is it tied to the loop at the end? And if it's tied to the loop, I can show you how to do one of those. Again, if one's broken, it's two of the 3-string unison that's broken. So very similar to doing the bass string, especially, it's the same up here. We're going to back this out one full turn, take the old string off, put the new string on. So the main thing with treble strings is determining what size string you need to use. So there's a few different ways to do that. One, like on this piano, which is helpful, the manufacturer actually puts string sizes on the bridge. You can see it says 15.5, 16, 16.5. You'll typically go from size 19.5, maybe even 20, down to 13, including all the half sizes in between them. So those are the sizes you're typically going to use in a piano. Sometimes the manufacturer will print them here on the plate itself, or you could take a measurement of micrometer, if you want to know exactly what size it is. But what I typically do is most pianos, if they don't mark it anywhere, up here, the lower end of where the treble strings start, you're usually going to be around a number 19. So you can count down from 19 to where you are, where your broken string is. Now, typically what it is every 4 notes is usually going to switch to another half size. So if you start at 19, you count 4 notes, then you go to 18.5, 18, 17.5, 17, 16.5, 16, 15.5, 15, and so on. And usually this last little bit down here will be with 13 for the last maybe 4 or 5 notes here. So that's a good way of doing it. That's the way I typically do it. The thing is, like I said before with leader sizes, same thing with this. You can go a little thinner. You can go a half size, even if you must, one whole size thinner, and you should be okay. What you don't want to do is use a string that's too thick. Like if you use a string that should be up here, or down here, that's thicker, and you use it way up here, there's a good chance you're going to break it when you pull it up to tension. So pianos are designed for the tension to be pretty much even all the way across the strings, and to make up for the differences in tone and pitch, they make them thinner and thinner as you're going up. So each string has about 250 pounds of tension on it. So on an entire plate, you could have as much as like 30 tons on the whole thing. So it's important to understand that that 250 pounds of pressure is going to handle the right size string differently than it will the wrong size. So again, on this one, I'll probably just count down. So we say this is 19, this is the 18.5, 18, 17.5, 17, 16.5, 16, 15.5. Yeah, so this is probably size 15, which looks about right, because then you'd be at 14.5, 14, 13.5, 13. So this is size 15. Again, you could go like a 14.5 just to make sure that you're in the right range, but a 15 should work just fine for this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a size 15. And then you want to just cut, of course, long enough, I'd say, for it to be way back here, down there, and just make another length of it so that you have 2 lengths, one that's long enough to go all the way down here and come all the way back up to the front of the piano, give you plenty to play with. Okay, so I got my reel of size 15. And we're just going to get the proper length here. Again, wear gloves. It's good for the strings and it's good for your hands and everything else. I'll clip that off. So again, I'll just take this from like right here, go down to where I would have plenty, and then I go back and I just make a little bend in the wire like that. And then I wouldn't do this next to the piano, do it a little bit away, but once you make a bend and you drag it back out, and once you get to the end where you started, it'll pop loose like that. So that's an easy way to know that you have the right length. Clip that. Tie off the reel so it doesn't all spin out, because that's a lot of fun. Okay, so I'll go ahead and we're going to assume that this string right here broke, and we decided not to repair it by tying a knot, and we're going to replace it. So let me go ahead and break this, and then I'll do as usual. We'll get these backed out a little bit, and we'll take the old stuff off. let's say this is how we encountered it. We either came to the house and this string was broken like this, or it happened while we were tuning it. So let's go ahead and get rid of this old string. So what I would do, since it broke on this one, let's go ahead and loosen it from this one. So again, one full turn, just like that. That will loosen enough for us to be able to get a tool in here. Like I said, whether you use pliers or a screwdriver, get in here and get the old string out like that. And go ahead and clip it off. Take it off the bridge. And then just wiggle it out of there. Yeah, okay. All right, we can go ahead and back out this one full turn as well. And then I like to line up my holes so they're going front to back. It's easier to get it in that way, and you may need to play with it a little bit just to find the right angle to get the new string in there. Okay, so we know we're doing size 15. We've already cut that. What I'll usually do is take the string and I'll give it just a little bit of an extra squeeze here, just like that. And we'll go down front to back. Okay, so then we'll lock it down on this hitch pin using our pliers. Again, I'll use a little piece of felt just to make sure that we don't damage anything. It's especially important on pianos that whose hitch pins have been painted, which I don't like, but you will encounter them. Okay, so we're locked down there. And just so we make sure we cut the proper length, go ahead and put those on the bridge pins. Okay. Make sure you don't twist these and then install them. Be careful. Ask me how I know that. I've done it 1,000 times. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with the right one. So, let's take this, do our 3 fingers, just like that. Again, we're going to use another tuning pin to spin this onto it. Just like that, and pull it where it's flush. And I just hold down with my finger. Get a few good turns. That should land pretty well right there. Looks like it's pretty much at the same spot. Let's pop that out. Put this guy on. Okay, so we may need to play with this a little bit. I'd say we could probably back out just a wee bit more so the pin's facing the other direction, or the hole's facing the other direction, sorry. Because you do want it to be like that. You want it to be pretty snug when you drop it back in there. And that one pushed in pretty easily enough with my finger, but just make sure it's in there. What I'll do is we'll just first make sure that this isn't stuck underneath it, and it's not, it's free. Put a little tension on it. Again, make sure that pin or the string is staying in the pin. And then we're going to pull up that winding. And I always look at the back of it. I'll put just enough tension on it to where I see the other side try to pull through. And that's just enough to hold it while we do the rest of it. Okay. All right, let's give it a little tug so we get the proper length. Okay, I'm going to do our 3 fingers. Use the other pin. Bring it flush. Pin it down with your finger. A few good turns. Looks like it's in the right spot. Alright, let's put it on there. And looks like we do need to come out just a wee bit. And see if we can get this one in over here. The string will usually kind of tell you where it wants to be. So you may have to make some adjustments to make sure it goes in the right place where you want it. And yeah, we're going to pull that a little bit more. So just bring it around nice and snug. Yeah, that's going to be a little loose, so we'll just bring this down a little. And just keep playing with it until you find it where it kind of just snugs itself in there a little bit. Again, make sure we're in there, nice and tight. Okay, we'll start bringing it up. Make sure that's nice and tight, and this one looks like it's trying to slide up underneath this one, so we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And we'll use our little spacer here to keep these separated. To put a little more tension on this one. Okay, so now will be a good time to go ahead and use this spacer into this. Now you already know you have one fixed one that you can adjust the others to. So just put a little bit of pressure on that bearing point under there. And you should be good. That looks pretty good. It'll cinch up a little bit when you tighten it, of course, too. And just make sure you have, you know, your 3 solid windings on there. You look good. Everything looks nice and professional. And then cinch them up. You should be good. Should be up to pitch, and then just tune them as you would normally. Now, when you do this, they're going to do a lot of stretching out. I would overstretch it probably by about maybe 20 or 30 cents. Whenever I come to a home where a string is broken, I do the repair first. Gives it time to stretch out, and then when I go through and tune it, I'll still leave it a little sharp, and then I'll finally just kind of set it about where it needs to be. And when I'm finishing things up, if the people are local, you could tell them, you know, you may need to swing back by and do a touch-up. Other thing you could do is just stick a mute or a piece of felt or something, especially if it's only going to be, if you're replacing the one side of each 3-string unison, you can just mute it out until you get back, because it's going to start sounding nasty. But anyway, so yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Just back these out 1/2 a turn, get the right size string, replace the string, tighten it up, make sure you have at least 3 windings on there, and that's pretty good. Okay, so this is one of the few different types of string loop makers that are available. This one I like because it allows you to do different types, whether you're doing a treble one or a bass one, and allows you to move this while you're spinning as well. But a few different designs out there. Like I said, this is just the one that I primarily use. You can use anything to make a loop in a wire. It depends on your situation. I've been at a home and had to use a nail one time to make it because for some reason this guy wasn't in my bag. So it happens. Just no matter what, make it look as clean as possible. You're going to want at least a few spins on it, just like you do on a tuning pin. So, but basically the way that this one works is you'll take the wire you need to make a loop with, and you'll put it through the front here. And you can leave more than you think you'll need. I highly recommend that, and you can just trim the excess. So all you do is, once that's in there, just tighten this to where it's like just snug. And then I go around the little hook here like this and spin this in this direction. And if you need to, you can tighten this up a little bit if you need it to be a little bit tighter, looping like that. But again, this one will do a few different types of loops. And then if you need to, just straighten out the loop and make any adjustments you need to make. But then once this is in the piano, I'll show you what to do next. So this would be like a typical one for a treble wire. And we'll just straighten it up and make it look a little pretty, and we'll snug it up. Okay, so we're back over here at the piano. Now the type of loop that you tie will be dependent upon how much room you have here, as well as if there are other loops in the design, what style they are. Sometimes they're wrapped real tight up here around the collar and the hitch pin. Sometimes you have more room, sometimes they're a little fancy. Just try your best to try to match whatever it is. This piano doesn't actually have any, so I just did kind of a generic loop. It's not the prettiest, but good for demonstration purposes. And of course, when you're in someone's home and you're working on their piano, just try to make it look as nice and tidy and professional as you can. But the big thing you want to watch out for is this is going to try to unspin itself. So you want it to unspin itself flat against the plate. So I wouldn't want to turn this upside down to where it'll unspin like, you know, all the way around. Just enough. Leave just enough so it'll kind of hold itself against the plate. And trim off any excess if it's going to be an issue with anything next to it. So anyway, go ahead and slide that over, and then go ahead and put it on through the bridge. And then I'll go ahead and get it set up in this end, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've attached it to the tuning pin. We did the others. So we'll go ahead and put a little bit of tension on it. Okay, and then we just use a screwdriver or something just to cinch it up a little bit. That should be pretty good. Make sure it's well seated. It's not going to go anywhere. Looks pretty good. It's got a few good turns on it, and then just cinch it up until it's up to pitch. It's going to do a lot of stretching out. Just be aware that you may need to mute it off, may need to come back and do some more for them, but that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's go back in the office and finish things up. So that's it. Hopefully this guide was helpful in showing you how to repair or replace a string in a piano. Thank you so much for watching. Any comments, questions, snide remarks, leave them below, and as always, stay tuned.